Hello, I'm Clarence Underwood of Count Us In. You can find us at www.countusindiana.org. I'm what's called a Racial Justice and Accessibility Fellow. Basically what it is that we do, we are here as advocates for the community to fight for your rights. Now, before I get into my presentation, I would like to ask everybody a question. In this question, I would like for you to think about your answer and think about how your answer really feels to you as a personal question. But then when we get to me asking you the answer for your question, I'll tell you that your answer does not matter, even though this directly pertains to you. This is what voter suppression feels like. My goal is to end voter suppression via the restoration of voting rights. Voting rights depend upon state law for people with both state and federal convictions. See Richardson versus Ramirez. Most states restore the right to vote automatically upon release from prison or completion of sentence. And the few states that require some official action, re-enfranchisement, keyword re-enfranchisement, give people with federal and out-of-state convictions access to their restoration process. In the District of Columbia, Maine, and Vermont, felons never lose their right to vote, even while they're incarcerated. In 18 states, felons lose their votes to right only while incarcerated and receive automatic restoration upon release. In 19 states, felons lose their voting rights during incarceration and for a period of time after, typically while on parole and or probation. Voting rights are automatically restored after this time period. Former felons may also have to pay any outstanding fines, fees, restitution before their rights are restored as well. In 11 states, felons lose their voting rights indefinitely for some crimes or require a governor's pardon in order for voting rights to be restored, face an additional waiting period after completion of sentencing, including parole and probation, or require additional action before voting rights can be restored. Indiana is one of those states where you automatically have your rights restored. You do have other rights that are taken away from you, such as being able to get government, federal or state government loans or grants. You also are restricted on the places that you stay and things of that nature. But here in our state of Indiana, you can still vote. On March 7th of 2021, President Biden issued an executive order titled Promoting Access to Voting, whose Section 9, ensuring voter access registration for eligible individuals in federal custody, requires the Attorney General or the AG to take 4 important actions to ensure access for people in federal custody or under federal supervision to voter registration and educational materials on voting. Out of the 4, I'll share the second action with you, which is the AG must establish procedures to ensure that contracts with jails housing federal detainees require those jails to provide educational materials on voter registration and voting, and to facilitate voting by mail, and to the extent practical and appropriate. However, this is in contradiction of state and federal mandate. You know, kind of how there's a federal law, but the federal government allows the states to carry things on. So with state mandates overriding federal, this allows for the Alabama Constitution, which gives us voter suppression at its finest. The Alabama Constitution states that no person convicted of a felony involving moral turpitude or who is mentally incompetent shall be qualified to vote until restoration of civil and political rights or removal of a disability. Before 2017, there was no comprehensive list of felonies that involved moral turpitude, which would disqualify a person for voting. In 2017, House Bill 282 defined which crimes fit this category. This would mean that in order to vote, you have to claim not to have certain disabilities that others say declare you're incompetent of voting, which is kind of like a user-loser approach when it comes to being disabled. In this picture, you see Joanne Wolf outside of her home in Cincinnati, Ohio, on September 15th, 2020. Joanne Wolf has multiple sclerosis, in which she has to use a stamp to write. She can't put a regular signature. That is not allowed when doing an absentee ballot voting. She was scared to go to the polls due to the pandemic and the overwhelming amounts of violence that we have going on with our current election and our past elections. Section 7 of the order should remedy this by ensuring equal access for voters with disabilities. It states that the NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, in consultation with the Department of Justice, the Election Assistance Commission, and other agencies appropriate, shall also analyze barriers to private and independent voting for people with disabilities, including access to voter registration, voter technology, voting by mail, polling locations, and poll worker training. Outside of those that are disabled, and we know that there are a lot, think about those that just do not have the right to vote. That I mentioned that there's about 5.1 million people a year that do not vote due to having a felony. With those 5.1 million people not being able to vote, it causes a very big problem. So that means that they are underrepresented. This is kind of like taxation without representation, because their money surely is taxed. Section 1 of the order states the purpose, and the purpose states, the right to vote is the foundation of American democracy. Free and fair elections that reflect the will of the American people must be protected and defended. But many Americans, especially people of color, confront significant obstacles to exercise that fundamental right. These obstacles include difficulties with voter registration, lack of election information, and barriers to access to polling places. It also states, people with disabilities continue to face barriers to voting and are denied legally required accommodations and exercise their fundamental rights and the ability to vote privately and independently. Lastly, in the section, the Constitution of the laws of the United States prohibit racial discrimination and protect the right to vote. The Writing Votes Act of 1965 and other federal statutes implement those protections and assign the federal government a key role in remedying disenfranchisement and unequal access to the polls. Now, Section 2 of this order is kind of tricky, because Section 2 of the order, the policy states, it is the policy of an administration to promote and defend the right to vote for all Americans who are legally entitled to participate in elections. It's the responsibility of the federal government to expand access to and educations about voter registration and election information, and to combat misinformation in order to enable all eligible Americans to participate in democracy. Basically, the president assigned it the duty of his cabinet to make sure that everybody votes, everyone. As a racial justice and accessibility fellow and cohort for County State in Indiana, I aim to assist in the governing and the process of the voting rights described in the order being restored specifically for those that identify as Black, disabled, or impacted by incarceration by providing services and resources to ensure the procurement of these rights. I will start these services by enlightening you on what has happened and how you lost your vote. In another segment, I would like to talk about being disenfranchised. Disenfranchisement is when a group of people are segregated via citizenship. After they disenfranchise you, next, you become disconnected. Once disenfranchised, you are disconnected, or civilita mortis, which means civilly dead. And that means you're dead in the eyes of the law concerning rights, which means you have no standing in law. After you're disconnected, you are then discriminated against. After you are disenfranchised and disconnected, being discriminated against is legal under the color of law or colorable law. In a nutshell, you get disenfranchised from society so that you are disconnected from society, and then it makes it legal to discriminate against you in society because you are not of society, you're just a part. You're not a part and partial, you are not an important part, you're just a part. Hopefully the information that I share with you will make you want to look into your voting rights and how you lost those rights, or any of your rights, such as your human rights. Once again, thank you for joining in with me. I'm Clarence Underwood of County, Indiana. I'm a Racial Justice and Accessibility Cohort Fellow. Have a nice day.